I never expected a simple gate to turn my life into a legal and personal battlefield. When I bought my lakefront property in Maple Springs, I imagined peaceful evenings by the water, a sanctuary away from the chaos of city life. What I didn't expect was an HOA that saw my land as their personal shortcut and would stop at nothing to take it from me. The trouble started on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. My doorbell rang, an impatient, repeated chime that immediately set me on edge. I wasn't expecting anyone. Peering through the peephole, I saw her, Jennifer Wilson, the Maple Springs HOA president. Jennifer was the kind of person who could command a room with a single glare. Blonde bob perfectly in place, pearl necklace gleaming. She stood on my porch, arms crossed, foot tapping like I had already inconvenienced her simply by existing. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Jennifer, what brings you here today?" I kept my voice neutral, though I already had a bad feeling about this visit. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "The board had an emergency meeting last night about your new gate," she announced, her voice clipped and sharp. "You blocked the lake access path that everyone has used for decades." I blinked, genuinely confused. "That path is on my property. I checked the deed when I bought the house last year." Jennifer's red-painted lips curled into something resembling a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, that's why I'm here. The board voted unanimously. You need to provide us with a key to your gate immediately. Homeowners are complaining they have to walk an extra 10 minutes around to reach the lake." My stomach tightened. I had installed that gate for a reason. After finding beer cans, cigarette butts, and even a used diaper litter in my yard 3 weekends in a row. People treated my property like a public park, and I wasn't about to let that continue. "Jennifer, I'm sorry, but I checked with the county," I said, standing my ground. "The property maps clearly show that path is private. It belongs to me. It's not a community shortcut." Her face flushed red. "That path has been used by residents since before you were born. There's such a thing as established use, you know." I folded my arms. "Actually, I spoke with my lawyer before installing the gate. There's no easement on my deed, and I've been posting no trespassing signs for 6 months. That prevents any claim of established use." Jennifer's eyes narrowed dangerously. The air between us felt heavy, charged with unspoken hostility. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Listen carefully. The board has ways of making things very uncomfortable for difficult homeowners," she said, her tone dripping with warning. "Last year, David Thompson fought us on his fence height. He ended up with $122,000 in fines and a lien on his house." She smiled sweetly. "Just give us the key and this all goes away." A chill ran down my spine. Was she seriously threatening me? "I think we're done here, Jennifer," I said firmly, reaching for my lawyer's business card on the side table. "If the HOA wants to discuss this further, you can contact my attorney." I pressed the card into her hand and gently closed the door. Through the window, I watched her storm down my driveway. Phone already pressed to her ear. Something told me this was far from over. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Jennifer's threat lingered in my mind like a warning siren. Could she really find me into submission? Could the HOA make my life a living hell just because I refused to hand over a key? Before going to bed, I called my lawyer, Mark Simmons, and explained the situation. "Document everything," he advised. "If they keep pushing, we'll need solid evidence of their harassment." The next morning, I woke up to something worse than I had expected. My email inbox was flooded with 5 separate HOA violation notices. I read through them, my pulse accelerating with each line. Violation 1, hedge height too tall. Violation 2, mailbox color not HOA approved. Violation 3, unapproved garden border. Violation 4, excessive water usage. Violation 5, unauthorized security modifications. Each violation carried a $100 daily fine. I clenched my jaw. This was blatant retaliation. That night at 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with security alert. My heart pounded as I opened the app. The live feed showed 3 figures standing at my back gate. Jennifer's blonde bob was unmistakable, and she wasn't alone. Robert Davis, the HOA treasurer, and Michael Thompson, The facility's manager were with her. Robert was holding something, a bolt cutter. My hand shook as I hit record on the app and immediately dialed 911. There are people attempting to break into my property, I told the dispatcher, voice tight with adrenaline. By the time I threw on clothes and hurried downstairs, my doorbell rang again. A police officer stood on my porch, flashlight in hand. Officer James, he introduced himself. We got a call about trespassers. I showed him the security footage. His jaw tightened. That's attempted breaking and entering. Let's take a look. We walked around to my back gate. The padlock had deep scratch marks on it. The officer shined his light around, revealing footprints in the soft soil. I'll need to file a report, he said. If this happens again, press charges. Just then, headlights swept across my driveway. A silver SUV pulled up. Jennifer stepped out, along with Robert. Officer, thank goodness you're here, Jennifer said sweetly. We were just checking on community property that this homeowner has illegally blocked off. Officer James didn't even blink. Ma'am, according to county records, this is private property. You were caught attempting to damage a lock on private property after hours. Jennifer's mask slipped. Her face hardened. This is an HOA matter, not a police matter, she snapped. We have bylaws. Bylaws don't override state law, ma'am, Officer James interrupted. I suggest you consult with your HOA attorney before taking any further action that could be considered criminal trespassing or vandalism. Jennifer's lips thinned, but she didn't argue. As she and Robert walked away, she whispered something to him, but I caught it. This isn't over. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Texts flooded in from neighbors I barely knew. Did you see what they posted about you? Are you really blocking lake access? The emergency HOA meeting tonight is about your property. I opened the Maple Springs Community app. A post from Jennifer was pinned to the top. Police Scarlight *** urgent. Homeowner blocks historic lake access. *** Police Scarlight. Emergency meeting tonight. 7 p.m. at the clubhouse. Below was a photo of my gate. The caption claimed I was destroying community value and privatizing lake access that generations of residents have enjoyed. There were already 47 comments, most from people I had never met, calling me selfish, demanding the HOA take action. I gritted my teeth. This wasn't just about a gate anymore. They were turning the entire neighborhood against me, and I wasn't going down without a fight. The HOA smear campaign was in full swing. That morning, after seeing the emergency meeting announcement about my property, I spent an hour reading through the flood of angry comments from neighbors, most of whom I'd never even met. Selfish homeowner ruining our community. This kind of behavior destroys property values. We should force them to take the gate down. It was surreal. Less than 24 hours ago, Jennifer had been caught on my property trying to break my lock. Now, she had the entire neighborhood convinced that I was the villain. I clenched my jaw. If the HOA thought they could bully me into giving up, they were dead wrong. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Mark Simmons. They're trying to turn the entire neighborhood against me, I said, pacing my kitchen. They're framing this as me blocking historic lake access. Mark sighed. Classic HOA tactics. Control the narrative before you can defend yourself. Take photos of your property and everything that proves the path is private. I'll draft a cease and desist letter to the HOA for defamation. I nodded, but my stomach was in knots. Just then my phone buzzed. A new text from Grace, my elderly neighbor. Grace, be careful. They're planning something at tonight's meeting. I exhaled slowly. I had a bad feeling about this. I needed more than just legal paperwork. I needed proof of what the HOA was really up to. So I decided to visit the county records office. If Jennifer was lying about the path being community property, I needed official documentation to prove it. The woman behind the records desk barely looked up when I made my request. Then when I mentioned Maple Springs HOA, her expression changed. Maple Springs? She asked, lowering her voice. They've been a nightmare for years. I frowned. What do you mean? She glanced around and then leaned in slightly. They keep trying to alter county zoning maps to claim private lakefront properties as community-owned, she whispered. They tried it back in 2018, but the county rejected it. Didn't stop them from trying again last year. My jaw dropped. So, they knew this path was private all along? Of course, she said, printing out my deed and survey records. Your property extends all the way to the lake shore. No easements, no right-of-way. The HOA's got no legal claim. I thanked her and left with a folder full of official records. Jennifer had lied to the entire neighborhood. And now, I had the proof to expose her. I was on my way home, still reeling from what I'd learned, when my phone rang. It was another security alert. I pulled over and opened the app. The screen showed my back gate, only now my lock was gone. Instead, in its place, was a brand new padlock that I didn't recognize. A note was taped next to it. Community access restored. Contact HOA officer key. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. They had actually done it. In broad daylight. They had destroyed my lock and replaced it with their own. I turned the car around and sped home. When I pulled into my driveway, I barely had time to register what had happened before my elderly neighbor Grace shuffled toward me, looking flustered. I saw them, she whispered. Jennifer, Robert, and their handyman. They used bolt cutters. Happened around noon. I have it on my bird-watching camera. I could have hugged her. Grace, would you be willing to tell the police what you saw? She lifted her chin. I'd be happy to. I'm tired of their bullying. I immediately called the police. Again, when Officer Reynolds arrived, I showed him the damage. He took photos of the destroyed lock, the replacement, and the note. This is criminal trespassing and vandalism, he confirmed. Would you like to press charges? I didn't hesitate. Yes, and I want a restraining order against the board members. Just as Officer Reynolds was finishing his report, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered, and a tense voice greeted me. This is Robert Davis, said the HOA treasurer. I stayed silent, waiting. You've made a serious mistake involving the police, he continued. We're prepared to forgive the gate issue if you drop the charges immediately. I laughed. Forgive me? You destroyed my property, Robert. That's not an HOA violation, it's a crime. His voice dropped to a threatening whisper. Jennifer knows people at your workplace. Your manager plays golf with her husband every Sunday. Think about what matters more, a stupid gate or your career. A long silence stretched between us. Then I hung up without saying another word. This wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This was war. I replaced the HOA's lock with a stronger one. Then I installed 2 more security cameras, making sure they covered every possible angle. Finally, I called Mark. They're planning something at tonight's meeting. I told him. They're desperate. Mark didn't hesitate. Then I'll be there. Bring all the legal documents you have. At 6:45 p.m., I pulled into the HOA clubhouse parking lot. It was full. They had rallied the entire neighborhood against me. I gripped the steering wheel, heart pounding. For the past week, I had played defense. Tonight, I was going on the offensive. The tension inside the HOA clubhouse was suffocating. Rows of folding chairs were filled with over 50 neighbors, their eyes shifting between me and Jennifer Wilson, who stood at the front, gripping a microphone like it was a scepter. Behind her, a projector screen displayed a massive image of my gate, red circles and arrows drawn around it, as if it were evidence in a criminal case. I walked in with my lawyer, Mark Simmons. Jennifer's expression flickered between surprise and fury. This is a private homeowners meeting, she announced. Try to regain control. Outside parties aren't welcome. Mark stepped forward, calm and unshaken. I'm here as legal counsel for my client, who is a homeowner and has every right to attend. Jennifer's knuckles whitened around the microphone. A low murmur spread through the room. Some people shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing they had been misled. Jennifer straightened her spine. This meeting is about your unlawful obstruction of community path that has existed for decades. That path has never been community property. I interjected, holding up my folder of legal documents. I have the county survey and deed records to prove it. Silence. A man in the back, Thomas, A quiet account I barely knew. Stood up. "Jennifer, you told us this path was deeded to the community 20 years ago," he said, his voice measured but firm. Jennifer's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flashed with uncertainty. "Well," she said, "there's been a traditional easement." "No easement exists in the county records," Mark interrupted. "We checked thoroughly." A few people exchanged whispers. Then came the loud knock. The door swung open, and Officer Reynolds entered, with 2 other police officers. The room erupted into chaos. Jennifer Wilson, Robert Davis, and Michael Thompson. Officer Reynolds called out, scanning the crowd, "We need to speak with you regarding an incident of property destruction reported earlier today." The clubhouse fell silent. Jennifer's face drained of color. "Officer, this is an HOA matter," she tried, voice wavering. "No, ma'am," Reynolds countered. "This is a criminal matter. Destruction of private property and trespassing are state offenses, not HOA violations." A woman near the front stood abruptly. "You told us this homeowner was vandalizing community property," she shouted at Jennifer. "You never said anything about this being private land." Neighbors turned to one another, confused, betrayed. Jennifer's mask was slipping. I took the opportunity to drive the nail deeper. "Not only did they break into my property," I said, holding up a stack of violation notices, "but they've also been using fake fines to bully homeowners into submission. I have reason to believe they've been financially exploiting this community for years." Gasps rippled through the room, and then Grace stood up. "She's right," she said, her voice steady despite her age. "I checked the financial reports. Every year, we're charged for lake path maintenance. But no maintenance has ever been done on that land. Where did that money go, Jennifer?" Jennifer's hands trembled. Robert, the HOA treasurer, was sweating. Officer Reynolds took one step forward. "You are all welcome to provide financial record voluntarily," he said, "or we can obtain them the hard way." That's when Jennifer bolted for the exit. Officer Reynolds and his team blocked Jennifer's escape. "Sit down, ma'am," he said. "You're not leaving." Jennifer had lost control. The power she once held over this neighborhood was slipping away by the second. Then Thomas, the accountant, spoke up again. "I've always wondered about the HOA finances," he said. "They haven't published a detailed breakdown in years, just vague summaries." He turned to me. "If they've been charging us for maintaining a path that isn't theirs, what else have they been lying about?" That's when the first homeowner demanded answers. Then another. A floodgate had opened. A wave of accusations crashed down on Jennifer and the board. "I got fined $200 for leaving my trash bin out for an extra hour," one woman shouted. "They rejected my fence 3 times. Another man growled. Then they approved the exact same design when I hired Jennifer's brother's company. Mark, my lawyer, turned to me. "This is bigger than we thought." With the pressure mounting, Jennifer tried one last desperate lie. "All funds have been accounted for," she snapped. "Everything is in the HOA's financial records." Officer Reynolds wasn't buying it. "We'll see about that," he said, motioning for one of his officers. A man I didn't recognize stood up. "I demand to see those records," he said firmly. "And I know my rights. As homeowners, we have the legal right to request an audit." Jennifer looked trapped. Then Grace pulled out a folder. "I've been keeping notes on HOA budgets for the past 5 years," she said, voice sharp. "I noticed something strange in last year's report." She opened the folder. "Here, Lake Access Maintenance Fund, $5,000 last year alone. But there was no work done. Where did that money go?" Jennifer didn't answer because she couldn't. "I'll tell you where it went," Officer Reynolds said, stepping forward. "We've been investigating the HOA board for months. Tax irregularities, fraudulent vendor contracts, kickbacks. We found payments totaling $127,000 to a fake maintenance company, Lakeside Maintenance, LLC, a company with no employees, no website, no business license." He pulled out a folder. "And its bank account," Reynolds continued. "It made direct deposits into Jennifer's personal checking account." The room erupted in outrage. Neighbors shouted. Some cursed. Others looked on the verge of tears. Jennifer was silent. Jennifer Wilson, Robert Davis, and Michael Thompson. Reynolds said, pulling out a set of handcuffs, "You are under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and criminal conspiracy." Jennifer's head snapped toward me. Her eyes blazed with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed as they pulled her hand behind her back. I only had one response. "Yes, it is." As Jennifer and the corrupt board members were let out in handcuffs, Thomas turned to me. "They raised our HOA dues for 3 years straight," he said, voice tight with anger, claiming it was for community improvements. Now we know where that money really went. I looked around the room. The neighbors who had once been against me were now standing with me. Grace touched my arm. "This was never just about your gate," she said softly. "This was about all of us." And she was right. This battle had started with my gate, but it had ended with exposing years of corruption. And the fight wasn't over yet. With Jennifer and the corrupt HOA board members hauled away in handcuffs, the once chaotic clubhouse had fallen into stunned silence. The people who had shouted at me just hours ago were now looking around in bewilderment, as if waking from a bad dream. Thomas, the accountant, broke the silence. "We need to elect a new board immediately," he said, rubbing his temple. "If the HOA has been this corrupt for years, we have no idea what else they've hidden from us." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Grace, standing at my side, squared her shoulders and stepped forward. "I propose a temporary leadership team," she said, her voice steady despite her small frame. "We need honest people go through the finances, undo the fraudulent fines, and make sure this never happens again." There was a pause. Then someone called out, "Grace should be on the board." A chorus of voices quickly agreed. Grace's eyes widened. She looked at me as if to say, "What have I got myself into?" Thomas raised a hand. "I'm an accountant. If the community wants, I'll volunteer to audit the financials and get to the bottom of the missing money." More nods. A woman near the back, arms crossed, spoke up. "We need people we can trust," she said. "Not like Jennifer's little inner circle." Someone else added, "No more fake violations, just to line their pockets." The room erupted into applause. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something strange stirring inside me. Hope. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The investigation into the HOA's finances deepened. Every homeowner received a letter detailing the findings. The board had been funneling HOA funds into fake businesses owned by Jennifer, Robert, and Michael. Homeowners had been fraudulently fined over $200,000 in total. The HOA's reserve fund, which was supposed to be used for actual community improvements, had been drained to nearly nothing. The legal consequences came swiftly. Jennifer, Robert, and Michael all took plea deals. They avoided prison time but were sentenced to massive fines, community service, and court-mandated restitution payments to the HOA. For the next 5 years, part of their personal incomes would be garnished to repay the stolen funds. The community breathed a collective sigh of relief. The bogus violations and liens that had been placed on homes, all revoked. The fraudulent dues increases, gone. Jennifer's house, she put up for sale and left town. And the best part? The money recovered from the scheme, nearly 60% of what was stolen, was about to be put to good use. 1 month later, the new HOA board held its first official meeting. This time, the room was packed for a different reason. There was no shouting, no scheming, no shady votes or secret fines. Grace, now an official HOA board member, stood at the front, reading off real community improvement plans. "We've gotten bids from real contractors," she said, "and I'm proud to announce that, with the recovered funds, we're moving forward with proper community lake access point, a real public dock, a picnic area, a kayak launch, everything the HOA had pretended to maintain before, but now it would actually happen." The room burst into applause. And the best part? It would be built on the north side of the lake, nowhere near my property. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The fight was finally over. One quiet afternoon, I took a walk down to my lake path. It looked just as it had before this whole mess began. Untouched, undisturbed. I reached for my gate, running my fingers along the new, sturdy lock. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. My phone buzzed. A text from Grace. Grace, board approved your garden expansion unanimously. Congrats. I laughed out loud. For so long, this HOA had been about control, about fear. But now, it was actually working the way it was supposed to. Months passed. The lake access project was completed. Neighbors started talking to each other again, not out of fear, but out of trust. The HOA, once a corrupt dictatorship, had become a real community organization. One evening, I attended an HOA meeting for the first time voluntarily. Grace stood at the podium, her posture straighter than I'd ever seen. First item, she said, flipping through her notes. The lake access project is complete, and we came in under budget, thanks to Thomas's negotiation skills. People clapped. Thomas nodded modestly. Second, Grace continued, as of today, we've officially removed the last fraudulent fine issued by the previous board. More cheering. Then, something I never expected. Grace turned to me. And finally, she said, smiling warmly, this community owes a huge thanks to the person who fought back when no one else could. My stomach flipped. Because of them, we uncovered the truth. Because of them, we got justice. And because of them, this neighborhood is better today than it was before. She gestured toward me. Let's give them a round of applause. I felt every pair of eyes on me. And then, the entire room erupted into cheers. I had spent so much time fighting, so much time defending. But now, for the first time, I realized I had won. And not just for me, for all of us. Epilogue, a new chapter. A few weeks later, I sat on my back porch, watching the sun set over the lake. From across the water, I heard laughter, neighbors enjoying their new lake access. I smiled. It was never about the gate. It was about justice. It was about standing up to bullies. It was about doing what was right, even when it was hard. And if I had to do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing.